Mr. Daydream by Roger Hargreaves. This is a story about Mr. Daydream. You know what he looks like, don't you? Because you've seen his picture on the front of his book. It's also a story about a little boy called Jack. And you don't know what he looks like, so here's a picture of him. Now Jack was a very good little boy. He always ate up all his lunch. He always went to bed when he was told. He always said please and thank you. But Jack was a daydreamer. Whenever he was supposed to be thinking about something, he found himself thinking about something else. Daydreaming. One day, Jack was at school. He was sitting at his desk listening to the teacher talking about history. It was a very warm day, and Jack was glad he was sitting in the back of his classroom next to the open window. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eyes, Jack saw something outside of the window of the grass in front of the school. It was something blue. It was a small, cloud-shaped figure. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. The figure looked at Jack, looking at him, smiled and waved. Jack looked at his teacher, who was still talking. Then he got up quietly, ever so quietly, and slipped out of the open window. He crossed the grass to the strange-looking cloud-shaped figure. "Hello," he said. "Who are you?" "I'm Mr. Daydream," said the figure. "What's your name?" "Jack," said Jack. "I'm going off on an adventure," said Mr. Daydream to Jack. "Would you like to come with me?" "Oh, yes, please," replied Jack. "Very well, then," said Mr. Daydream, and putting two figures as well, he let the loudest whistle Jack has ever heard in his whole life. A huge bird swooped down out of the sky and landed beside Jack and Mr. Daydream. "Come on," said Mr. Daydream to Jack, and climbed on the bird's back. Jack climbed on too. It was a really enormous bird, and there was plenty of room for both of them. "Hold on," said Mr. Daydream. Jack held on tight. The huge bird flapped its huge wings, and suddenly they were high up in the air. They flew faster and faster over the countryside. They flew over fields and farms and towns and hills and trees and valleys until they were far, far away from Jack's school. It was very exciting. Mr. Daydream turned to Jack. "How would you like to go to Africa?" he shouted. They were traveling so fast now. Jack just nodded his head and held on even tighter. And they flew and flew across the sea. Suddenly, it seemed no time at all. There below them was Africa. The bird landed in a jungle clearing, and Jack and Mr. Daydream climbed on the bird's back. It was very hot. "Come on," said Mr. Daydream to Jack. "Let's go and explore." So off they set, pushing their way through the jungle. Suddenly, in the middle of the clearing, they saw an elephant. "Hello, Mr. Daydream," trumpeted the elephant down his trunk. "Would you like a lift?" "Yes, please," replied Mr. Daydream, and the elephant reached out his trunk, picked him up, and put him on his back. And he reached out his trunk again, picked up Jack, and put him on his back. It was very right. The elephant carried them through the jungle until they came to a river. Then he set them down on the ground and said goodbye and went off back to the jungle. "How are we going to go across the river?" Jack asked Mr. Daydream. "Perhaps I can be of assistance," wheezed a particularly voice going from a river. He looked, and there was a crocodile. "Use me back as a bridge," suggested the crocodile. It was very helpful. They were halfway across the river on the crocodile's back, where the crocodile grinned a rather nasty grin, all teeth and a smile, then flicking his enormous tail and shooting Jack and Mr. Daydream up in the air. The crocodile opened his horribly large mouth and waited. It was all very exciting. Oh dear, gasped Jack as he looked down that enormous mouthful of teeth. Oh dear, oh help! Mr. Daydream, upside down behind him, put two fingers in his mouth, let out that very large whistle of his. Suddenly, just as the crocodile was about to go snap, the big bird swooped down out of the sky. Mr. Daydream and Jack landed on the bird's back. Phew, said Jack. Father said the crocodile. Well, I promised you an adventure, didn't I? Grinned Mr. Daydream. You certainly did, said Jack. And now, said Mr. Daydream, I think we will all go to Australia. And they did. And Jack knew how to throw a boomerang so that it always came back to him. And now, said Mr. Daydream, I think we will go to the North Pole. And they did. And Mr. Daydream fell right up to his middle of a snowdrift. And now, said Mr. Daydream, I think we'll go to the Wild West. And they did. And Mr. Daydream found a huge 10-gallon cowboy hat. The trouble was, when he put it on, he couldn't see it out. Jack, he coughed underneath the hat. Jack! Jack! Suddenly Jack realized that it wasn't Mr. Daydream saying his name. It was the teacher. And Jack was in the Wild West. He was sitting at his school desk. Jack, said the teacher again, you've been daydreaming. It was true. He had. But do you know something? Daydreaming is more fun than history. No boy, that horrible piss cat. I think you knocked me over for this sick history. Classics. Yeah. I think I'm at the open classic. Well, I think it's some egads. I like it. Well, think of something crazy and you want to say, you